My name is Catherine McNeur's. I'm an associate professor in the history department. I'm an environmental historian, and that means that I look at the ways that humans have impacted the environment and also the ways that the environment has impacted human history. So I have a book coming out this fall called Mischievous Creatures, which is the history of two sisters in 19th century Philadelphia who were scientists, Margaretta Hare Morris, who was an entomologist, and Elizabeth Carrington Morris, who was a botanist. I actually fell across these women accidentally. I had been intending to write a book about the history of a tree. And when I was at the New York Historical Society, I found all these letters from Elizabeth Morris to a botanist who had written about that tree. And I was wondering, who is this woman, Elizabeth Morris? And I Googled her, as anybody would, and there was no Wikipedia page, there was no material about her. And then I later fell across some letters by Margaretta Morris. Again, they were hidden in the archives. And her letters, she expressed her deep desire to find peers and how she was cut off from a lot of access to the sciences as a woman in the sciences. She didn't have access to university libraries and university collections. She didn't have the ability to be educated. So she had to do a lot of stuff on her own, and she just wanted to be connected to the larger community. Part of the issue is that they were hidden in the archives. That's why there hasn't been much written about them. Their papers were buried deep in the collections of male scientists, and over time, we've been able to uncover it thanks to a lot of digitization and access. I got to focus on two sisters who came from identical backgrounds, and yet they chose two very different paths. One going into a very public role in the sciences, becoming outspoken, writing science articles under her own name, and engaging in debates, whereas the other one decided to be anonymous. She preferred to work behind the scenes, supporting the careers of other scientists, collecting things, illustrating books, writing anonymous articles that were very popular. What's interesting about this, the fact that they took two different paths, is that you can see where there are social constraints around what women could do, and then also where they had the power to shape their own paths. And so my book is about not only their lives and how they made space for themselves in that culture, but also why they've been erased over time and how they were erased, and what that tells us not only about the power structures in the history of science and in scientific culture at that time, but also the power cultures in history and how people have written history and who's been erased from history and why. So the impact of history books tend to come the years after the book is published. When my first book came out, Taming Manhattan, which is about New York City and public space and battles over environmental justice issues, I would occasionally come across a city planner who told me that it would change the way she dealt with urban parks, or grad students at conferences would come up and tell me that it inspired their dissertations that were dealing with animals and in public spaces in cities. A couple years ago, I published an article about Margaretta Morris's discovery of a new cicada species. That she had donated all these specimens and descriptions of the species to the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia. A couple of men in that organization, instead of naming the species for her, decided to name it for themselves. And so I wrote this article for Scientific American about this, and entomologists who read the article, who were specialists in cicadas, saw that and saw the injustice and are looking to right those wrongs by renaming the cicada species for Morris instead of for Kaysen, who was one of the people who had taken that name. I had no idea that when I got into this project that there was a chance that my work would end up righting some of history's wrongs in that way. My name is Catherine McNeur's. I'm an associate professor of history at Portland State University, and my research on environmental history uncovers the power relations in the environment and how it has affected what we know and what we don't know about our environments.